Hi, everyone. This is Strictly Money. I'm your host, Saijal Patel. Let's face it, buying a home in Canada is not cheap. In fact, it could be the biggest expenditure you make during your lifetime. Add to this another fact: 40% of marriages in our country break down. So how do you protect your investments if you and your partner decide it's time to consciously uncouple? Joining me now to discuss all the implications and considerations are divorce financial consultant Eva Sachs and collaborative lawyer Anna Marie Musson. Thank you both for being on this show today.
Thank you.
So this is what's interesting. So many people are aware relationships break down, and yet prenuptial agreements, postnuptial agreements, really any type of marriage contract between couples are rare. So Eva, what do you tell people who feel like contracts like these aren't necessary, that they're a romance killer?
Well, they're not. I think a recent study told us that 60% of the lawyers polled indicated that there was an increase in the requests for separation for prenups. And out of that group, over 50% were from millennials. So when we know millennials are concerned about this, they're getting together at later stages of life. So they've acquired some wealth and some assets. They've seen what happened with family and friends going through divorce. So they're looking for ways and recognizing that they do want to protect their wealth going forward.
Yeah, that's a very interesting point, isn't it? Because relationships have changed over 20 years. And like you said, a lot of people are gathering assets. They're more complicated. Some people are getting married later, or in fact, not getting married at all and living together. So Anna Marie, when does it actually make sense for someone to have this type of contract?
Well, the timing of these agreements is something that often is an issue that we have to deal with. And so one of the first things that might happen is we'll get calls from people saying, oh, we're moving in next week. We'd love to get a prenup agreement or a cohabit agreement signed and ready to roll. And having that sort of time pressure in place is a real problem, because there needs to be conversations that are had as to how this agreement is going to actually play out and what kind of terms we're going to put in the agreement. So in terms of timing, the more time people have before the event, so it could be the wedding or the moving into the house together, the better off the couple is. And, we kind of joke about this a little bit in our world, where we talk about, the right time to have these conversations about these agreements is really at the time you're buying the engagement ring, because these are really important conversations. And I say that a bit tongue in cheek, but the reality of the situation is millennials and professionals nowadays, and a lot of couples, they're really sophisticated. And they're having these conversations about money early on. And so that's something that we really encourage people to do. And really, timing-wise, it's the best for everyone.
Yeah, so is there a situation where a contract like that may not be valid then?
Absolutely. So if you're dealing with a situation where we're getting married next week, or we're closing on a home next week, here, sign this agreement, and the couple sign off on it. And later down the road, things aren't quite what they thought they would be, and the couple is now looking to break up. The very first thing they do is they go to this agreement and they look at it and they say, geez, with that impending date or the pressure of he wouldn't marry me unless I signed the agreement, well, the whole thing gets thrown out. And so those are the situations that we really want to avoid. And we really want to have the conversations, like I said, early on, and the conversation sort of as you're planning your wedding, you can also plan your financial future together.
Eva, we only have about 45 seconds before the break, but you and your team have created a modern marriage contract. Tell us about that. What does that entail?
A modern marriage contract is really, we've designed it for looking at the money that a couple has contributed to the purchase of a home, how to protect that going forward in case an event like divorce happens. So we're really gearing it for that specific piece. We include a financial professional, net worth statements, 2 lawyers all working together, creating a comprehensive contract that can stand up going forward in the future. We all do it for a flat fee because we're working together. And so we really consider it and we present it to people like an insurance policy for the investment they're making in probably one of the biggest purchases of their lives.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Strictly Money. I'm here with Eva Sachs and Anna Marie Musson, and we've been discussing the modern marriage contract. Well, I want to turn to buying a home because arguably it's the single biggest purchase a couple can make. So, Anna Marie, how does a partner or one of the partners protect their interests?
Well, I think there's a lot of misconceptions out there that if you're not married, you're fully protected when it comes to the interest in your house. Or if you're the only person on title, that you're also protected. But the reality of the situation is your partner, so your common law partner, the person you're living with, or your spouse, very much could have an interest in your home. And what ends up happening on breakup is that person will potentially register a claim against your property in your home. So that's going to tie you up in terms of any type of financing or any type of sale of your home. And then that's when they start having conversations, and then that's when they issue potentially a claim against you for the interest that they say they have in your home. And so what ends up happening on breakup is couples get into this very nasty, complicated legal argument and legal case, and it causes an awful lot of stress, an awful lot of anxiety, and quite frankly, an awful lot of money. And so really the way to solve this problem is by way of having a modern marriage contract where the couple really does sit down and outline, if we were to break up, what will happen to the interest in the home.
Yeah, and I guess does it depend on whether they are married or common law, and also where they live? Because provincial jurisdictions, they're all different, aren't they?
To some degree, but there's a lot of continuity across the country. And the reality of the situation is if a couple is married, there's automatic rights to the family home. And that's especially of concern to couples who might get married later in life, or couples who own the home before their spouse moves in, and they don't realize that they haven't protected that initial amount they came into the marriage with upon breakup. And so what's happening is someone will come into the marriage with a very big piece of equity or a piece of property. And upon breakup, they don't realize that the entire amount is split between the couple. And so that's leading to a lot of difficult conversations by us lawyers explaining what that looks like. Mm-hmm. And it's causing a lot of stress because people don't realize the amount they came into the marriage with for that matrimonial home is not protected.
Eva, you deal with clients like this all the time. How does a couple broach that conversation? Because like Anna Marie said, it's not an easy conversation to have. There's a lot of emotions involved.
I think the first thing certainly is not to use the word prenup. It somehow has strange links to it in terms of connecting with somebody who maybe has more power than the other and sort of forced. So I think that's the first thing. I think when people get together in a relationship, they should be transparent about their finances anyways. So this forces or encourages that conversation to disclose as gently as they can what they've got, what their assets are, what their liabilities are, when they're first getting together. And then as they're having that conversation, and that leads to the possibilities of, let's say, buying a house, being much more open and transparent in who's contributing what amount, why they're doing that, why they may be concerned in terms of protecting some of their assets. So it's a much more pragmatic conversation, and it could be quite a romantic conversation. Open up a bottle of wine on a Friday night and let's have this discussion, just as much about having a discussion of, wanting to have children or what people's priorities are. It's no different. And I think in today's world, and with the millennials certainly that we see, they're having those conversations, which is great.
We have about 45 seconds or so. How do real estate agents play a role in this? And can they play a role?
Well, I think absolutely in terms of, just identifying two potential new buyers or people who are buying a home. The interesting thing about realtors is I think they really get involved in the couple's relationship a little bit, because buying a home is such a big deal, and really sort of being involved in helping them make this decision. I think just even identifying that this is something you might want to talk about or something you might want to consider, I think is enough to maybe spark the interest to have those conversations.
All right. Well, we're going to take a very short commercial break. Stay with us, because when we come back, we're going to talk about borrowing money from parents. The hot housing market has forced a lot of couples to get financial assistance, and especially from parents. So Eva, walk us through this, because you deal with a lot of clients around this. What does that support look like from parents, or what can it look like? And how do parents protect themselves?
Well, it's true. Again, stats tell us that 30 to 40% of millennials are getting help from their parents, right? Millennials can find that they can manage monthly payments, but it's that big down payment that's always a challenge in terms of trying to save. So parents can do so. The bank of mom and dad is there as a great resource for them. The challenges are how all of that is going to be set up. So if it's strictly a gift, there's a lot of risks involved in doing that. Again, the implications of that, if things go off the rails and the relationship ends, as Anna Marie alluded to. If they set it up perhaps as a second mortgage, that has its challenges as well, because parents may have the rights to that. Banks may not allow that to happen. So there's restrictions there, and then it also may restrict the cash flow of clients and affect their debt ratios as well. So there's risks on that. And we're hearing in some situations where parents are setting up either a line of credit for this money, which puts the onus in terms of their own financial plans going forward. So there's risks in a number of ways of doing this. And if it's just strictly a loan, then it needs to be papered properly. Because again, sometimes we see these loans happening or papered after the fact. It really was a gift, but now it's a loan, so I have to repay my parents. And again, that causes some confusion when they're looking at separation or divorce.
So Anna Marie, how do you advise parents to protect themselves then? What are some of the steps that they can take?
Well, what's interesting is, and I think you mentioned this earlier in your show, is that with the divorce rates at 40%, and quite frankly, I think it's closer to 50%, just in my practical experience, the reality of the situation is it's very risky for parents to be gifting and or loaning money to their children without some safeguards in place. I mean, if we look at the statistics, I mean, if this was an investment parents were making, and your investment advisor said, you have a 40% chance you're going to lose equity or lose the down payment principal, who would sign up for this investment? It just doesn't make sense when there is a simple safeguarded way that you can protect the equity, protect the down payment by way of a modern marriage contract. And so that's really where we're, educating parents on, if you are going to be gifting, if you are going to be loaning your children money, an agreement really should almost be conditional on gifting that money, because it just protects you, it protects your child, and it really is just too risky of a thing to do otherwise.
I want to turn to another scenario that's common now, and that is couples inheriting money from their parents should a parent pass away. Is it smart to use that money to pay off the house, or should you do something else with it?
Well, putting on my lawyer hat, we absolutely like to keep that money separate. We want it to be a separate account, a separate interest investment vehicle, whatever that looks like. Because once you start combining it into any a joint home or joint investments, that's where upon breakup you lose that credit or exclusion for the money that you inherited, or you came into any type of lump sum money like that. That's where we start to have challenges. But you also have to, or at least as a lawyer, I also have to understand that these people have real lives to lead. And having a money sitting in a bank account when the couple is, looking to have more cash flow, to pay for children's activities or maybe a lower mortgage rate, it doesn't make sense from the family perspective to kind of siphon off that money and have it saved in a separate type of vehicle. So again, this is where we're having conversations with clients to say, look, you absolutely can put this money into your home or any other type of joint investment, but you just have to put an agreement in place. And the other kind of comment I just want to add about these agreements is you can have these agreements after you've been married, and you can have these agreements after you've moved in together, because a lot of people don't realize that that is an option, and that is the way we handle a lot of these kinds of different situations.
All right. Well, stick around, because after the break, we're going to talk about how you protect your assets should you and your partner decide to go separate ways. Welcome back to Strictly Money. We've been talking about modern marriage contracts and protecting your investment in a home. Eva, when couples do decide to go their separate ways and split up, the legal process and the financial process can feel so overwhelming. So what do you advise them? What's the first step that they should take?
The first step that people should take is recognizing that calling a lawyer and going to court isn't their only option. In today's world, there's so many more options in terms of how they may start negotiating these kinds of discussions, and that there are other professionals that maybe they have to do their research with, and that can help them in terms of clarifying some issues for them. So for instance, should they be speaking to a real estate agent to get a sense of what the value of their house is and what that might look like? Maybe they should be speaking to a mortgage broker to see what kind of potential mortgage they might qualify for going forward. There's parenting specialists there that they can be speaking to that will help them talk to their children about separation and divorce and give them some good guidance on that. And obviously working with lawyers that are like-minded, that aren't working towards going to court, but really working in a collaborative way of coming to an agreement that's going to work for both spouses. And then working with a financial specialist as well.
Yeah. One of the biggest financial mistakes I know I've seen is that when they do split up, there's someone who's very attached to the home and they want to keep the home regardless. How do you help them navigate some of those choices? Because sometimes that's not the best decision for them.
It's interesting that happens quite a bit. So the big answer is it depends, because the answer is not only can they do it from a financial perspective, and can they do it from a financial perspective, not only currently can they manage or taking on the mortgage and so on, but what happens when there's other expenses connected to the house? Do they want to keep the house for the sake of the children, not disrupting the children, keeping them in the same school catchment area or in the same neighborhood where they have support systems? So it's a very complex question to answer. So certainly the work that I do and working with lawyers like Anna Marie is running forecasts and projections to show them the what ifs they keep the house, what if they have to take on a bigger mortgage, what if the roof needs fixing the day after they sign their agreement, all those kinds of things, and showing them the financial implications of all of that. One of the big things that I see in working with clients is not do they need to keep the house, but can they afford to keep the house for a period of time? That might be doable and possible as opposed to keeping it forever. And so then setting priorities. If we really want to keep the house until the kids finish grade school, as an example, what other set-offs what other sacrifices might we have to make in order to do this? And what might we do in the separation agreement that can allow that to happen?
Yeah, you never think about all the maintenance and the roof being, having to be replaced and all of those things. Anna Marie, what are some of the legal implications that they need to be aware of?
Well, I think it ties a lot into what Eva said. And really, the reality of the situation is, can you afford it based on your post separation financial situation? And there are a lot of different obligations that clients may have. And that's in terms of child support payments, spousal support payments. These might be short-term obligations, they might be long-term obligations. And so working with someone like Eva, where we can actually forecast what your financial future looks like and what kinds of numbers we're looking at, sometimes we're able to put together a short-term situation. So maybe we can keep the house for 2 years and then look at providing some stability for the children short-term, and then moving into something that makes more sense on a long-term basis. But the reality of the situation is there are a lot of moving pieces of this puzzle that we kind of have to put together and really create something that makes sense for the couple and for the children.
Yeah. Well, we appreciate your time so much. There's so much more we can talk about. We'll have to have you back on another time. But that was Eva Sachs and Anna Marie Musson.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, that wraps up this edition of Strictly Money. If you'd like to learn more about the modern marriage contract and whether that makes sense for you, you can go to Eva Sachs's website, loveandmoney.ca. And as always, if there are financial topics you want to learn about, we'd love to hear from you. Send us an email. We'll see you next time. Until then, stay well, stay wise, and stay wealthy.